Hi, it's Dwyer. GamblersAdvisory.com for premium picks, DwyerVIP.com on Roku, Dwyer Boxing News. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Talent is really hard to explain to people, right? The best way I can put it is by using a baseball analogy. Some guys, for whatever reason, can throw the ball 100 miles an hour, right? You could be an excellent pitcher. You could know how to pitch. But either you can throw the ball 100 miles an hour or you can't, right? You see it every year in the NFL draft. Some guys can roll out of bed and run for 440s, right? A wide receiver could be an excellent wide receiver without that top end speed. Excellent. But a 4.4 guy is a 4.4 guy. He can just get down the field faster than the slower player, right? It's unfair. Sometimes the guys with talent don't even work at it, right? They just have it. Now, as a gambler, I'm a sports fan too, but really I'm a gambler. I have to look at the stopwatch. I have to pay special attention to guys who, for whatever reason, the guy can be a jerk, the guy could be an idiot, the guy could have an attitude problem, he could show up late for games, he could let down his teammates. But if he has the talent, and if he's able to marry that talent to execution, in other words, if he's a fastball pitcher who can throw 100 miles an hour, and he somehow has developed a curveball, an off-speed pitch, other pitches that he can throw over the plate for strikes, even when he's behind in the count. In other words, if he has talent and mastery, then I've got to make a note of that. So the next time he performs, I can put it down on paper, right? I can get my bet in at the betting window. Now, what I've found, and it's really just a commentary on life, I've noticed this for years, is that sometimes guys who have the whole package, the talent with the mastery, aren't appreciated by the public. The public treats them the same way they treat overachievers. Nothing wrong with overachieving. Don't get me wrong. Nothing wrong at all. But the public can't differentiate. Casual fans, myself, can't differentiate at times between special talents and very good talents, right? My idea of a special talent, what I'm going to say is controversial, but it's all opinion, right? If you go back and if you look at that first Evander Holyfield-Riddick Bowe fight, the performance Bowe puts down in that fight, the hand speed and the combinations, I'll just say that even a man who beat him in the amateurs, like Lennox Lewis, in my opinion, has never reached that level, right? Now, Riddick Bowe obviously never figured out how to walk by the buffet table. Riddick Bowe obviously couldn't keep himself in sufficient shape to hold Eddie Futch's interest. Keep in mind, Joe Frazier's trainer, Eddie Futch, was Riddick Bowe's trainer for a time during Riddick Bowe's best moments. And Eddie Futch eventually gave up on Riddick Bowe because Riddick Bowe couldn't keep it together. But make no mistake, the Riddick Bowe who beat not just Evander Holyfield, but Jesse Ferguson, that was a great fighter. He had it all together. He had the physical gifts, He had the size, he had the power, he had the hand speed, he had the coordination, he had the drive, right? Quite frankly, it's hard for me to imagine a guy who had more at heavy in the last, let's say, 40 years, right? But he couldn't sustain it. We don't remember him now like we remember Lennox Lewis and others, right? Well, let's talk about some fighters who I think are a little bit overrated right now. I think these are very good fighters, right? But I don't believe these are necessarily great fighters. My list is controversial, right? Wanma. I'm a skeptic. Abner Maris. I know he's riding high right now, right? Lucas Matthys. I know online there was a big difference of opinion. Just count the negative votes I got when I pointed out that Matthys was swinging for the fences against Lamont Peterson and missed several punches by several inches. Not a precision puncher, right? Didn't seem, in my opinion, to have a plan B, right? Kid Chocolate, Peter Quillen, unbeaten middleweight champion. In my opinion, the hand speed is not there. He's a puncher. I don't believe the volume is there, right? Again, I know I'm picking on guys who are toward the top of the food chain here. Saul Alvarez. You know what? In my opinion, if you can't fight 3 minutes of key rounds, you have a problem, right? Maybe he's artificially at 154 pounds. I don't know. He is one of the hardest punchers in the sport. He does have punching ability, right? But understand, for him to get to greatness, he's going to have to put himself in the shape that Riddick Bowe was able to put himself in before that first fight against Evander Holyfield, right? By contrast, I believe you have guys out there with 100-mile-an-hour fastballs and mastery. They're operating in broad daylight, but for some reason, they haven't gotten the prestige, the acknowledgement that they should get. Now, let me just back up a second. Let's remember that in the UK, right, in a UK fight, Jeff Lacey was once favored over Joe Calzaghe, right? Let's remember, in the United States, Diego Corrales was favored over Floyd Mayweather, right? There are great fighters out there who, for some reason, the crowd just doesn't really put a lot of stock in. Let me just point out, too, the obvious. Joe Calzaghe and Floyd Mayweather had spectacular hand speed at the time of these fights, right? But yet the crowd didn't fully appreciate what they were doing. Let me name some guys today who I feel the crowd's not totally appreciating what they're doing, right? This is just my list of guys who might be possibly great fighters, right? History will bear this out. Maybe like Riddick Bowe, these guys will lose discipline and fade, right? Maybe they'll have their Andrew Galata moments like Riddick Bowe had later, right? But these guys, to me, right now, just have it all together. It's all working. These guys, to me, are among the best in the sport. Some of the guys I didn't believe in. And then these guys have lifted their game. They've added stuff as their careers have gone forward to put themselves, quite frankly, in my opinion, on the verge of greatness, if not already there, right? Let's remember, Mikkel Kessler was favored over Andre Ward in Oakland. Think about that, right? Andre Ward beat him. Andre Ward beat Carl Froch. You know, Andre Ward, I know now people say, yeah, Andre Ward's a great fighter, right? I don't think they recognize who he is. Andre Ward's on this list. A guy who, in his country, he's not viewed that favorably. But yet this guy, every time I see him in the ring, he looks spectacular to me. Heavyweight Tyson Fury, right? Another heavyweight who's about to have the biggest fight of his career. Alexander Povetkin, a middleweight who was getting there, then suffered some setbacks, right? Physically, has been out of the ring. But defensively, he has few peers. Dmitry Pirog, another fighter. People are now recognizing that this guy's volume and accuracy are off the page. The guy also slips punches. Leo Santa Cruz, another fighter. Quite frankly, as I see it, and I know it's controversial, he is the best at 168 pounds in the UK. And that's James DeGale. And another fighter. I know at times this guy's a knucklehead. Doesn't listen to his corner. Decides he's going to trade with heavier punchers. Right? But few people in the sport fight better inside than Timothy Bradley. Well, let me just say, Gennady Golovkin, to me, is a possibly great fighter. I know these pay-per-view channels, cable stations, I guess HBO, now realizes that this guy might be special. But I think it's even deeper than that, right? We talk about great punching power. You know, Matthew Macklin actually has a pretty good punch. He can bang. But there's a difference between Macklin's power and Gennady Golovkin's power. I'll put it to you this way. In analyzing this fight, I can't even envision a way in which this fight goes the distance. Golovkin hits so hard and frames his punches so well that I think this fight might just flow off the page. He's fighting a guy who, quite frankly, is two people, right? The Matthew Macklin who fought Felix Sturm actually threw more than 1,000 punches in that fight. Very high volume, very front foot. Smothered Felix Sturm. Quite frankly, you and I know he beat Felix Sturm, right? Two judges somehow had Felix Sturm up by 4 rounds. You look at the CompuBox numbers, you look at the fight, you tell me how that's even remotely possible, right? Let me say, I thought Felix Sturm was going to win the fight. Then I watched the fight, and I realized Felix Sturm didn't come close, right? Now that Matthew Macklin's interesting. One wonders what happens if that Matthew Macklin shows up against Gennady Golovkin. Then we're going to get a total shootout. Somebody's going to go down, right? The other Matthew Macklin is the Matthew Macklin that has a completely different style. He seems to have been reworked with Buddy McGirt, right? I haven't seen a Jekyll and Hyde situation like this since I've been watching Robert Garcia's work with Marcos Maidana, right? Against Sergio Martinez. Matthew Macklin was on his back foot. Looked good. Had a lot of head movement. Was winning that fight. Let's get real here. He was beating Sergio Martinez until the later rounds of that fight. His volume dropped tremendously. In that fight, he didn't throw the 1,102 punches that he threw against Felix Sturm. He threw less than half that amount, 461 punches. Right? He didn't jump in. It was spectacular strategy. Sergio Martinez was confused. Had Macklin just closed the show, he would be middleweight champion of the world. The problem was, and Emmanuel Stewart figured it out while the telecast was going on, Martinez took a few rounds, but Sergio Martinez is adaptive reactive. He figured out which way Matthew Macklin's head was going, then proceeded to drop Macklin twice in that fight, right? If the Macklin who fought Sergio Martinez shows up against Gennady Golovkin, I believe he gets stopped. I think that while styles make fights, being on your back foot works against Sergio Martinez. It doesn't work against Gennady Golovkin, right? Golovkin is advanced. He's not just a puncher, right? And his punch is a 100-mile-an-hour punch, right? He's not just a puncher. He's a guy who has a lot of Lennox Lewis in him, right? This is a guy who comes in and literally is throwing punches to see which way you move. The Ishida fight is a masterpiece, right? He also has Mike Tyson-like combinations. In that Ishida fight, he comes in at one point, he hits Ishida in the ribs, and with the same hand, he leans further, hits him upstairs. Understand, he doesn't need a wind-up to generate ridiculously strong punching power, right? He comes in behind a guard. It's hard to hit him. The offense is dazzling. Understand, defensively, he's superior to Matthew Macklin. If you're on your back foot, I believe Gennady Golovkin walks you down. He plays angles. He knows how to be on the side of your jab. He knows how to deflect punches. He's watching you. He's throwing punches, some real, some fake, right? He's feinting to see which way you move so then he can get inside with power shots, right? I don't believe Peter Quillin would stand a shot against him. You know, I'm really wondering whether Sergio Martinez could beat him, right? It'd be an interesting fight because one of the secrets to Martinez is that he's also a big puncher, right? Huge puncher. I know Martin Murray went the distance, fair enough. Just remember, this is a guy who stopped Darren Barker, stopped Sergey Eisenzurek, stopped Matthew Macklin, stopped Paul Williams. Notice the trend here, right? As you see Martinez boxing, understand his straight left is one of the sport's best punches, right? So, I'll just put it to you this way. Matthew Macklin is impressive. He's a very good fighter. But he's fighting a fighter I believe is possibly a great fighter. Completely different league. I like Gennady Golovkin in this fight. I'm expecting a stoppage. Let me point out, the gamblers are onto him because the lines on this fight really don't make it worth betting. But if you're a boxing fan, you really need to watch this guy because he hits harder at 160 than many guys hit at 168 pounds, right? Also 160 has a bunch of guys. Daniel Gill, right? Hassan Njikum. 160 is really the Wild West, right? Gennady Golovkin is that rare guy who looks like he has the capability to unite the division, right? This guy is one of boxing's best knockout punchers. I personally am hoping the Macklin who fought Felix Sturm shows up just so I could see how Golovkin does in an absolute shootout. And let me also point out, I wasn't always as sold on Gennady Golovkin. I saw him in a fight a few years ago against Kasim Uma. Look it up online. And he looked average in several rounds. He got out of his comfort zone. That guy no longer exists. He's tightened up a lot, right? And understand, the Gennady Golovkin who's going to enter the ring is going to be today's version, not yesterday's version. And today's version, as I said before, might possibly be great. I put him right there with Ward, Fury, Povetkin, Pirog, DeGale, Cruz, and Bradley, right? These are guys who, you know, the public respects. But for whatever reason, the public doesn't love, right? And yet, these guys might be precisely where Joe Calzaghe was when he entered the ring against Jeff Lacy. Let me hear from you. Leave your comments for me here online. Visit us at gamblersadvisory.com. The bet I'm recommending is, well, you know what? I think the fight's unbettable. I'm expecting a knockout. I think Gennady Golovkin gets the knockout. If he doesn't get a knockout, then I expect him to get knocked out. I'll be surprised if this fight miraculously makes it to the 12th round. We'll see what happens. Thanks for watching.